She's 32 and the dew is all but gone from the rose. He's 24 and still a little wet behind the ears. Is she running scared? Is he? Can true love triumph against these odds? Write it as the script to a romantic comedy and you've got a date night hit and a perennial chick flick favorite, When the Graduate Met Sally. In real life, we have this drama instead, real obstacles to a successful marriage. A significant age difference coupled with a serious experience deficit. Is the solution casual adultery? Will mooning about the impossible make things better? Romantic comedy? Tragic love story? That's not for us to decide. But we can learn a lot by looking at things from the inside out. This is another letter I got from one of the young men who are attracted to the 21 convention. I am so delighted to get these letters. I'd really like to hear from a young woman, to be honest, to hear about the other side of the romantic difficulties that these guys are running into. But I love the story that we've got here. We've got really kind of 5 things going on, 6 things going on. We'll just kind of go through them one by one. The age difference, does it matter? Doesn't it matter? They say love conquers all. You can't start it like a car. You can't stop it with a gun. My question about the age difference, it is significant at this age, 24 versus 32. An 8-year age difference later on, he's 42 and she's 50. That really doesn't matter very much. He's 62 and she's 70. It doesn't matter at all. The longer these two kids are together, the better the age difference works to their advantage because men die younger than women, so they're likelier to die closer to each other in age if they manage to stay together that long. But a 24-year-old guy, really practically speaking, a 24-year-old guy should be dating 21-year-old women. He should be a little bit older than his dates, a little bit taller, a little more worldly, a little more experienced, but not too much, because young married couples shouldn't make mistakes together. They should have fun growing into their adulthood together. That a young marriage like that, he's 24, she's 21, he's 22, she's 19, he's 25, she's 22. That kind of a marriage is kind of the last stage of adulthood for those, or adolescence for those kids. It's growing into adulthood, and they grow into adulthood together, and that's not inappropriate, that's not wrong, it's fairly common, but here's the real deal. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Nothing is ever perfect. Nothing is ever as perfect as we can imagine it, and so these two people found each other when they're really not in the ideal orbit age-wise. Does that mean that their relationship is wrecked? I mean, that really is the gist of this conversation that I'm having with this young man is, should I stay or should I go? Should he pursue this relationship? Should he follow through on this? He's in love, she's in love, it's going great right now. Will it go great forever? That's something they have to work out. And that's not a question that anyone can answer for them, and that's not a solution that anyone can provide. But the question that I would have for both of them is, what is their motivation? What is it that you're in this relationship for? A big elephant in the room for him would be, my question for you is this the first time that you've ever really had easy sex? And I don't mean easy sex in the sense of the easy virtue of the woman, but simply, is this the first time in your life that you are able to have sex as often as you want with the absolute minimum of overhead, the arranging things, the going out on the date, the sitting through the boring play, the dessert afterward, drinks afterward, the finally getting alone and going through all of the rigmarole that goes into the dance of romance? And is this the first time that it's ever been relatively easy for you, and is that coloring your judgment? Another question that I would have for him is this kind of an escape from adult responsibility? You're now at the point where you're empowered to make adult decisions. Are you looking to make a big one like a marriage just to get it out of the way, rather than taking your time and making sure that you're getting it right? For her, the big elephant in the room for me, for her, is she looking at the wall and is she afraid of it? The wall being the impending ravages of age. Age is not kind to women, that when from 15 to 25 they're sweet and gorgeous and they think it'll always stay that way, and from 25 to 35 they can see it starting to fade, and from 35 to 45 it really kind of gets scary. She's 32. Is she looking at the wall, and is she afraid if she doesn't make her move now that she won't be able to make her move later? I would really love to see this couple going through those kind of questions in detail, because for both of them the question is, should I stay or should I go? Are they doing something temporary that seems kind of fun but isn't going to last, or are they really on the path to marriage? And it is possible that they are. Even though there is this age difference between them, it's entirely possible that they are on the path to marriage, but the only way they'll find that out is if they discuss everything, go through everything, explore all of these motivations, and make sure that they really are mutually committed to pursuing a serious long-term monogamous relationship. The second issue is the experience deficit, which I think is in the back of the minds of a lot of guys, particularly in the age where we have convinced young women to be much more free sexually before marriage. You now have a long roster of competitors in your mind when you finally get together and get naked. Who knows who you're competing with and how much bigger and better he is than you. I think this is ridiculous. Number one, get over it. You have a past, she has a past, and neither one of you can change it. If you want to explore it out of some kind of morbid curiosity, I mean, go ahead, but this is not going to be a pleasing experience for you, I don't think. The one thing I could think to get out of it is to turn it into fodder for sex fantasies, and if you're that grown up and mature about it, you don't have anything to worry about it. If you're worried about it, you need to get over it, because you can't change it, you can't erase it, you can't make it go away. She is who she is, and she is who you are in love with, you say. So be in love with her. She is who she is now. Who she was yesterday and 4 years ago and 10 years ago doesn't matter at all, because none of that can be changed, and she's not that person anymore anyway. She's the person you're in love with. Be in love with her. And let her past go, and let your past go, and make sure that she lets your past go too, because none of this means anything to either one of you. The second thing I would say is just get better. The guys spend all their time thinking about getting pussy, and they don't think anything at all about what they're going to do with it once they get it. I think this is dumb, that if you are making love properly, appropriately, if you are doing everything you should be in bed, she's completely incapable of making any sort of comparisons. If she can tell you her phone number, you're not doing it good enough. If she's able to make any sort of comparison about what you're doing with her, work harder, get better, because eventually there will be no comparison. There will be no top 10 in her memory. There will be a top 1, and that top 1 will be you. And just make that so. And then there's no competition. She doesn't compare you anyway. She tells you she doesn't compare you, but she doesn't compare you, because the fact of the matter is, if you're making love at a breakneck, frantic pace, you're making love for an hour a day tops, and the other 23 hours of the day are what matters to her. That's when she sees you as a man. That's when you're delivering on your responsibilities as a man. And so get better at that stuff too. Get better at being a man. Get better at doing the job in bed, but get better at doing the job all the time. And that just means get busy. So that's my answer. Get over it, get better, get busy. Get busy at being a man. And this is part of the logistics of pursuing a marriage in this case. Number one, her friends are all 8 years older than your friends. Her friends remember her old boyfriends, and they're going to bring them up from time to time. She already looks older than you. She's already on the downside of the beauty curve. She's already past her peak in terms of beauty, and so you're going to watch her get older. You're both going to get older, but it's going to seem faster to you because she's further ahead on that aging curve. Eventually, you're both going to be old and wrinkled, and she's going to have white hair, and you're going to be delighted to have any hair at all. And you need to think about that too, that instead of looking at her mother, guys always say look at her mother, go look at her grandmothers, and see what they look like and see how they're holding up, and go look at your grandfathers and kind of get an idea of what you're going to look like 50 years from now. Are you going to be able to deal with each other then? More importantly is dealing with each other now. And so, the guy being 24, he's young and inexperienced in the world. She's 32. She's been an adult for a long time now. She has paid the gas bill. She has paid the light bill. She has possibly arranged to get a mortgage. She has life insurance. She has taken on all kinds of responsibilities, adult responsibilities that seem very familiar to her that are all going to be new to a 24-year-old guy. And so I think that he needs to step up and really join the adult world and get good at it fast. And she might need to step back a little and let him take his lumps. Remember that if he's 24 and she's 21, they're going to be taking lumps together, and he's going to be leading the way. And every time he makes a mistake, she's going to look up at him and think, well, could I have done any better? She's going to know that she could have done better, and she's going to need to step back a little bit and let him grow into his adulthood. The other thing that I think he needs to think about is that he needs to look very much like a man to her, and they both need to be careful that he doesn't look like a child to her. That he needs to be aware of his leadership role in this marriage and really step up to it and be a man about it and express his masculinity all the different ways that it can be expressed simply by taking charge, by being the man in charge. But he needs to be a dominant masculine force in every part of their marriage, from the practical details of the execution of daily life to the bedroom. He really kind of needs to step up and be aware of the masculine image that he's projecting, and she needs to be aware of that too, and to step back a little bit in order to let him be the man in charge, to let him take that leadership role. And that age difference kind of gets in the way of it. Maybe the experience difference kind of gets in the way of it too. He can take both of those away just by behaving appropriately to the role that he's in, by being the man in charge of a 32-year-old woman, by being the man in charge of their sex lives together. He can make this happen. The subject of casual adultery is just amazing to me, and I think it's just a beautiful illustration of how screwed up the messages that we transmit to young people are. There cannot possibly ever be a circumstance where adultery is good for a marriage. There is never a circumstance where adultery is good for a marriage. I think that casual, indiscriminate sex, sex with strangers, sex with people you don't love, I think this is a terrible idea. I think this cannot possibly have any sort of salutary consequences, and that the risk of really unhappy, unsavory consequences is huge. But in the case of an intact marriage, a happy marriage, a marriage that really is working, where the man and the woman are both working very hard to make sure that that marriage works out, to introduce casual adultery into that relationship in any way at all, in this case, suggesting that he go out and have casual trysts with unfamiliar women, or the idea of having, threesomes or other kinds of group sex, or having an open marriage, trading partners around, or anything at all like that. I think these are amazingly stupid things. That what makes a monogamous relationship monogamous is not the exclusivity of the sex, but the exclusivity of the trust. That you are in a relationship with a person you trust above all others in the world, and you share with her confidences that you don't want shared with anyone. And if you can imagine sharing your spouse with some other man, if you as a woman can imagine sharing your husband with some other woman, this is not a marriage. You're not married to each other. You are living together, and you are making casual compromises with each other's emotions, with each other's emotional life, and you are engaging in behavior that, if it is not eminently, immediately risky to your relationship now, it's because your relationship was broken long ago. And it's plausible to me it's because your own evaluation of your behavior is badly damaged. But you cannot ever risk a happy working marriage by introducing anything like adultery, anything even like sharing your confidences with a stranger, carrying your confidences to a stranger. This is a violation of the loyalty that you have sworn between you, and I don't care what words you say about it, you can't recover from this. This is devastating to your marriage, and you will never recover from it. Don't ever do anything like this. And then the fourth thing is the indulgence of the subjunctive. I make a distinction between the subjunctive and the existential, and this is deep, deep philosophy, but you don't have to get your mind in a twist about it. The existential is what really happens, what really goes on, the things that you really do, the real events of your life. And the subjunctive is everything else that you can imagine that doesn't happen. The subjunctive is the invocation of worlds not in evidence, and it is extremely useful. It's one of the most useful things we do. It's what we do that animals cannot do. It's what makes us human, is the invocation of the subjunctive, anticipating worlds not in evidence, remembering worlds not in evidence, using that remembrance as a guide to what's going on right now and what's likely to happen in the immediate future. You cannot possibly drive with the subjunctive because you got to know what that idiot in front of you is going to do. Is he going to pop into your lane at the very last minute when you least expect it? Do you need to be thinking about moving to another lane, hitting the brakes, doing something different? This is all invocation of the subjunctive, and it's enormously valuable. Where the subjunctive is less than valuable and is ultimately very damaging is where you imagine things that are impossible. And so he imagines that they're both 24 together, or that he's 24 and she's 21, and now he has her when she's young and fresh and at the height of her beauty and the height of her innocence and the height of her joyousness, and he gets to have her the way that nobody gets to have her because he's going to marry her then. Well, no, the truth is he's not going to marry her then, because if he's marriage-minded at 24, she's not marriage-minded at 21. She wasn't marriage-minded at 21. She was young and innocent and had been lied to about the consequences of casual sex and went off and made a few mistakes, and fortunately only a few mistakes. And then she got very serious about her romances, and she's been very serious ever since. But at 21, she wasn't the guy he was looking for. If, on the other hand, at 24, he's looking for that casual romance, then he runs into her at 21, and he has her for a night, or he has her for 6 nights, or he has her for 6 months, and then he screws it up, and the love of his life is ruined because they came together at the wrong time. When was the right time for them to come together? When they did come together. That's the right time. The existential is all that really exists. And so he met her at 24 and she was 32 and they fell in love. When was the right time for them to fall in love? When they did. And when is the right time for them to be in love? Now. And when is the right amount? What is the right amount of sexual experience for her to have? The amount that she has right now, because there is no alternative. What's the right amount of sexual experience for him to have? The amount that he has right now, because there is no alternative. There is no alternative to the existential. And to indulge the subjunctive and to meander, wandering around, looking at all the wonders, all the joys and wonders of the subjunctive, and to imagine the perfection of the subjunctive, and to prefer this imaginary world that you've invoked in your mind, the only place it exists in your mind, to prefer that to the existential is an error. It is a mistake. It is unbelievably stupid, because the existential is the only thing that can exist. And so, are you in love with her? Is she the love that makes you crazy? Are you thinking about her all the time? Do you invent reasons to be with her? When you're going out to run errands, do you ask her to come along, not because she'll be useful, but just because you want to have her along? Are you always playing with her? Are you always looking for reasons to touch her? Are you always tickling her? Are you always furtively grabbing for her breasts or for points further south and making a delight of lovemaking even when you're both fully dressed, even when you're out in public and maybe someone will see, but you're careful to make sure that no one will because you don't want to humiliate her, but you do want to play with her. You can't stand not playing with her. You're in the car waiting for her. She's in the supermarket and you're sitting out in the parking lot and you can barely see into the supermarket and you can really only see all the way down one aisle. And so you find yourself looking down that one aisle hoping that she'll pass by and you'll see her for a little bit. And there she is, just for a second, all the way down at the end of that aisle. And you can barely see anything. You can't see any details at all, but you know the shape of her body and you know the way she moves and you know it's her. When you feel that way, you're in love. That's what it feels like to be in love, when this person makes you crazy, and not at 3.5 months, but at 3.5 years, at 35 years together. She still makes you that nuts. You're young and newly together, and you're going through that sexual honeymoon together. And that is totally, totally wonderful. And do not waste it and do not blow it by imagining that it's somehow going to be different just because you imagine it. It's not going to be different because you imagine it. If anything's going to be different, it's because you change it. But some things you simply cannot change. And if you don't accept reality for what it is, if you insist on preferring unreality, you're just going to ruin something that's really perfect and that will not last. This honeymoon period is brief, and when it's over, it's really gone forever. It doesn't mean that you can't have a thrilling sex life together, but it'll never be as intoxicating as it is right now. One of two things is true. Either at the end of this period, you're going to be tired of each other and you're going to move on, or at the end of this period, you're going to be more deeply in love with each other than you ever have been so far, and you're going to stay together forever. Or it could be that you're going to stay together forever. So, my little bit of advice to this couple and to everybody watching this movie is if you think you're in love, if you think you're headed toward marriage, pursue that. Pursue it relentlessly, but marry gradually. I love Friar Lawrence in Romeo and Juliet. When he's marrying them, he says, love moderately, which is funny because it's impossible. That Romeo and Juliet are our pet illustration of the immoderate love of young people, but it's not possible for anyone to love moderately. If you're in love passionately. You're in love to the hilt. But if you're marrying, if you're headed toward marriage, even though you're loving passionately as much as you can, marry gradually. So each one of you take full responsibility for the relationship. Be fully conscious. Be fully aware of what it is you're doing. Talk about everything and talk about it in detail. Where you are married right now, what level of marriage you're in right now. We are exclusively committed to each other. We are living together. We are sharing our household finances. We are sharing our household responsibilities. We are not having a child yet. And we are not even considering having a child yet. And because of that, we are both taking full responsibility for our contraception. And this is a beautiful illustration. We are what we do, and the life that you're living is the life that you see yourself living. The relationship that you're having is the relationship that you see yourselves having. And if you both want to take full responsibility for that relationship, a really beautiful, ideal way of expressing that full responsibility is for each one of you to take full responsibility for contraception. So he wears a rubber every time. He uses spermicidal lubricant every time. She's on the pill, or she has an IUD, or she uses a diaphragm every time, and she uses spermicidal jelly with that diaphragm every time. 99% effective prevention of pregnancy squared means that if you get pregnant on top of those odds, you need to buy a lottery ticket. You need to go to Vegas because your luck is incredible. But each one of you taking full responsibility for contraception is both your nearly perfect probability of not spawning a child, but both your expression of 100% responsibility for making sure that you don't have a child. That you don't have a child until you're ready to have a child. And this is the appropriate way for the two of you to be married when you're trying to figure out if you want to be more married. And every time that you become more married, you should do that consciously, explicitly. You should do it by agreement, by mutual agreement. You shouldn't fall into the state of being more married, because you will easily fall into the state of being forever more divorced if you do things casually, if you take things by chance. I like this young man. I think he is an amazingly brave individual for bringing this to me. I like his young girlfriend just by implication. I know nothing about her but what he's told me, but what he's told me makes me think that she's a remarkable person. And I think these are both remarkable people, and I think they need to explore their relationship consciously and in detail to find out if they really are going somewhere, and if they are, how to make sure that they get there. And that's really my advice for every person watching these videos, but especially for the young people watching these. You have the opportunity to make perfect decisions. You have the opportunity to make decisions that you never have to go back on and you never have to regret. But you'll only make those decisions by making them consciously. So think about what you're doing. Think carefully about what you're doing. Think arduously, consciously, rigorously, vigorously. Think hard. Get things right.